Let's dig into the 5-stage system, which is where I've broken down how I see the illustration journey, your journey as an illustrator from the very beginning to the point where you are achieving a sense of mastery. Let's look at how this applies to you so you can get started on your journey. Okay, so first off, if you are one of those people who is just thinking, Tim, tell me what I need to do. I'm really just getting started at this. I don't really know where to start, and I'm not really drawing, and nothing's really kind of working out quite well. I think the answer is really simple. Start at stage 1. All we need to do is go there, right, scroll down, click on stage 1. Click on the first video there, and I'll basically explain to you what I think you can do right now to get started and get your sort of artistic life kind of organized a little bit. Start building that ritual, which I think is really important. So again, if you're in that sort of mind frame where you're like, I'm just starting out. What do I do? That's what you do. I'll see you in that video. Now. If you're still here, I'm assuming that you're interested in learning about how this system functions, and you also might be considering, look, Tim, I'm not necessarily just starting out. I already have a significant amount of experience drawing. I'm just trying to sort of maybe learn some of these more advanced techniques. Or again, you have drawn before, but maybe you've sort of fallen out of love with it, or you haven't sort of developed the habit. Wherever you're at, what I want to do is sort of explain to you how I think you can use this course and how these stages apply to you and your journey. So the metaphor that I like to use for my general ethos and how I have designed this 5-stage system and how I think it functions is the metaphor of the brush. So stick with me for a little bit while I kind of unpack this idea. But the basic point is that I think in most cases, what's happening is that instead of people trying to learn how to use a set of simple tools or a simple process or the brush they actually have or the techniques they actually have, instead of them learning how to use those things in depth, what we tend to try and do is sort of look laterally for new brushes, new techniques, and new fresh ideas. And that really mastery is the function of learning how to use the things that you do have really well, as opposed to trying to seek new fancy things and try and collect a huge number of brushes. So the reason I use the brush thing is that I think it's very prevalent, right? I think it's very easy to start off and not necessarily get the results you want, and then you see the artist that you really admire and they are using a particular tool, and you sort of look for that tool and you kind of are like, what brush is that? How are you doing that? And, for better or worse, I think that is an impulse that artists have. And I think it's really important for beginning artists and aspiring artists to get the pencil that their favorite artist is using, because then like, look, it's not the pencil, it's me. But I do think that this general attitude towards what I call it is essentially it's sort of moving laterally, right? Moving side to side, trying to get sort of, trying to collect 100 brushes that we don't know how to use, as opposed to sort of understanding how to use the single brush that we do have, that kind of everyone has, the default round brush in Photoshop or whatever your brush in Procreate or whatever is. Learning how to use that one in depth. Now, the reason that most professional artists will tell you, most high-level artists will tell you that the brush doesn't matter is because it doesn't, right? Because they can pick up any brush and kind of use it. They have quite a significant level of mastery, and they understand it's not about the brush. But it is about you understanding which brushes and tools you are using and how to use them in depth, how to understand the techniques. And the whole ethos of the Line and Color Academy is that what we need to do is try and limit, in most cases, all of the noise and all of the peripheral stuff and focus on trying to master a specific set of skills at one time and really going deep with those set of skills. And I think ignoring other things that are not relevant to the general skill we're trying to build at that time is a huge part of the task. It's a huge part of the challenge. Again, because there's so many distractions in the modern world, as I'm sure you know, there's like a million different people with a million different opinions on how to draw. And if you're here, again, I appreciate you listening to me. Hopefully, again, the things I've said have kind of resonated with you. And I do have a lot of experience, taking people from, really just not being very good at drawing to being professional artists. I kind of seen the journey happen. I have a lot of experience doing that. And the key thing is that in many cases, there's so much information that it's very easy to move laterally. It's very easy to kind of look for new techniques, new ideas. You find 10 amazing artists and they'll tell you 10 different ways to do it. The key is what you need to find is your way of doing it, and you need to learn your way of doing it really well. Now, your way may be very similar to my way. It may be very similar to someone else's way, but the process is the same, is that each of us has to learn how to specifically handle our tools in a very deep, to a very deep level of craft and a deep level of mastery. And that really is where the sort of amazing skills start to happen, right? So it doesn't really matter which brush you use, but it does matter that you try and learn how to use it and that you don't waste time trying to find other ones. Because once you master one tool, it's a lot easier to then transfer the depth of skill that you've learnt from mastering that one tool onto a second tool, because you understand that there is depth to how these things are used. The simple example I'd use with the round brush is that, again, most people just kind of try that out and it's sort of not very interesting. It doesn't do anything special. But again, a huge part of learning how to use it is understanding, again, what opacity to set it at, how to sort of build up with it, how to control it, right? How to blend. And again, all those things are possible with a very simple round brush. But again, most people don't actually learn how to use the round brush. They just keep looking for different brushes. And when those brushes don't work, they go look for more and more until you've got a million of these things and a million programs and a million tutorials and a million techniques. And none of them actually get learnt properly. None of them get integrated, and we're not striving for mastery and depth of knowledge in a particular technique. So there's lots of distractions. And what the 5-stage system is just my attempt to communicate to you the core skills that I think need to be built sequentially. And I've basically outlined that at a particular stage, you should be thinking about a particular set of things. And more importantly, that you should not be worrying about another particular set of things. So the other classic example I typically use in this instance is that when people start out, they're often really concerned about what their style is. And what I always say is that, you don't really need to worry about what your style is if you don't even know how to use, a simple pencil, right, or a simple brush. If you don't understand how a simple process or technique works, and you can't really learn that in depth, don't worry about your style. Right? Don't worry about whether you're good or bad, or whether you're a professional level, or how far away from a professional level you are, because that stuff just takes up space in your brain. Now, you can think about it, and you can certainly watch all the videos from stage 1 to stage 5 sequentially. It's totally up to you how you consume the content in this course. But the key is that I'm giving you advice about what I think is a very high value set of things to focus on, in stage 2, for instance. And I'm purposefully saying, let's not worry about all of the other stuff, which we will handle later on. And I think that, again, is the main strength of it. And that's the best way I can organize my ability to communicate with you and try and give you some very specific targeted advice without being sort of in a one-on-one mentoring scenario with you where, we're spending, days and days and days together, and I really get a feel for exactly where you're at. So part of this is where you have to figure out where you're at. And I think you have to be very honest with yourself. Because, again, I think most people will benefit from watching all of the videos from stage 1 to stage 5 and taking in that advice, and then, again, maybe going a little bit deeper and figuring out, again, the things that they've got sorted and making sure that they're kind of matching their skill level to the set of things they need to focus on, right? And then finding that stage and really sort of, taking that advice on board and understanding that, I'm just telling you, you don't need to worry about all this other stuff because we'll do it later and it's just going to take up sort of space in your brain. So again, that's the basic idea. And hopefully I've explained that effectively. Now, what are the stages? Well, I sort of have some names that, again, describe the general sort of idea. Stage 1 is essentially about the idea of building an artistic ritual. Stage 2 is about building your reliable digital process. So again, understanding the tools in depth that you're going to use digitally in Photoshop or in whatever application you want to use. Again, I use Photoshop for all the tutorials, but most of these things are very universal. And if you already have experience, trying a line and color style in another program, I don't think you'll have much trouble doing most of the basic sort of technical stuff in any sort of program you want. But again, I do recommend Photoshop because I still think it is the most flexible, complete tool there is. So stage 3 is about developing reliable progress, right? So not process, but progress. How do we actually start to track whether we are improving? And I think that's an important step that we need to separate from, worrying about still, are we good, or, what our style is. Let's just try as a whole unit to figure out how we can build a machine that, in effect, we can pour energy and time and effort into, and out the other end comes artistic improvement, right? That's the best way I can explain it. I think it's important to build that system and think only of are we getting better at drawing? Are we sort of improving? And to separate that from are we good? Because again, I think you can show that you can improve. And I think if you can show to yourself and prove to yourself that you can improve, that gives you a huge amount of motivation, because you know then that it's worth putting more time in. It's not just sort of idle effort. Because drawing and learning to master drawing and line and color is something that will take a long time. This is not a sort of a five-stage system where it's kind of Monday is stage 1, Tuesday is stage 3, and Friday is stage 5, right? That's not really what it is. This is a resource. You can think of it more like a book. You have lifetime access. You can come back and check out these stages next month, next year, in 5 years, whatever you want. This will be here. You can check it out. And the goal is for you to understand that, again, the advice here is about how you implement a lot of the tutorials and other advice in the course. So again, check these out. But again, realize that the main point is to get you to a point where you can really start focusing on building particular skills and trust that it's, worthwhile just focusing on them. Stage 4 is where we focus on creating the images that you want, right? So your style, your images. How do you make sure that you're comfortable getting your intent and your emotion and your ideas onto the page? I think, again, that's very different to what we'll do in stage 5, which is where we're starting to think more about professional work and reliably working outside our comfort zone. So again, stage 1 is the ritual, your artistic ritual. We start that with sort of sketchbook stuff, really. That's just where it all begins, getting that regular ritual for drawing. Stage 2 is about developing a digital process that's reliable and we can depend on, one that's simple, that we can focus on mastering. And again, we're not going to worry too much about developing crazy advanced techniques or trying to be sort of flashy. It's just about understanding that in many cases, the interesting nature of images is based on what's in your imagination and how good you are thinking of an interesting image to make, right? It's not about fancy techniques and sort of shiny stuff. Stage 3 is about developing a machine that will prove to you that you're making reliable progress, right? That you are getting better. And again, I think that's something you often have to track over time. The trick is you're not necessarily going to improve day to day, but if you work on these things, you will start improving month to month. Stage 4 is about your style and making sure that, again, you do have the ability to apply some of those same concepts of improvement, but directed more at like, are you moving more towards your style and how you want images to look? And are you really getting the feelings and the emotions that you want into the image? And again, stage 5 is more about taking on challenge, and it's basically sort of my advice for how to start thinking about getting professional work and how to work as a professional artist while enjoying it, right? And developing the mastery and the techniques that we can try and, use there to measure, to help us understand what skills we need to be professional artists. And again, how to build that even, before we start working. So that's it. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. You can sort of check out the notes in a little bit more detail. Now, I said that, the real key thing is for you to figure out what stage you're at. Now, I would recommend, and I'll sort of talk about, again, sort of 3 main scenarios just as a rough example. Again, these are not 100% going to track with you, but they might give you an idea for what it is. So the first is maybe, again, as I said, if you're really just starting out, and I'm assuming most people have kind of drawn to some degree. I'm sure you've drawn to some degree before and you're passionate about this and you're interested in a line and color style and cool stylized stuff and video games and comics and that sort of thing. Again, if you're really coming to this from the beginner's standpoint where you don't have a reliable process, you're not really drawing as much as you like, you're not a professional artist, then I'd say definitely just start at stage 1 and really make sure you get the ritual sorted as soon as possible. Make sure that you are regularly sitting down to create work. And again, we start that just by doing sketching. Just make sure that, again, if you're not sitting down and regularly creating art, every for a certain amount of time each week, then that is the number one priority, right? Make sure you're doing that, because the sooner we get that happening, the sooner you work out how to get that working in your life, the easier everything else will be. That really is the primary foundation block. So again, if you're starting out, just focus on that. Now, as you do that, as you start to build your reliable process, as you start to build your art ritual, you can obviously watch, the tutorials and try and, check out some of the other stuff. You can obviously, watch the stage 2, the stage 3, stage 4, stage 5 stuff and understand sort of how what you're doing now fits into the rest. Because I think, again, that, even though there's a lot of sort of videos there, they're not designed to be watched in one go. Anyone can, you certainly can watch them all in one go, but they're really designed so that the primary thing you are going to be doing is putting a pen to paper as much as humanly possible. And there's a lot of content in this course, but it's meant to be digested sort of, bit by bit as you go. You can watch the tutorials bit by bit over, what I'm assuming will be probably at the very least sort of months of really sort of getting that sort of stuff sorted. And again, when you come to stage 2, to the next stage after you finish stage 1, maybe you've watched all of the others, but you can rewatch the stage 2 videos and just kind of really focus on that, which will start talking about, okay, you've got the ritual, but now it's time to figure out how to create, amazing images and start to get the concept of illustration, how we figure that stuff out. So again, if you're starting, that's what I'd recommend. Just start on stage 1, get your ritual working, make sure you're drawing as much as you possibly can, because that's what makes the difference. So if you are maybe more of an intermediate artist, where I would imagine probably you have some sort of the core skills that are from stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 already sorted, right? There's a lot of people out there, and I'm sure you might be one of those people who is already creating art that is kind of, good, and you're already sort of sitting down and regularly doing it. But Again, maybe you don't have the ritual 100% sorted. Maybe sometimes when you go to create, you're having trouble. That is a challenge to do it regularly. Again, I recommend that you sort of start at stage one and really just, again, watch all of these videos at a pace that's sort of comfortable for you to do, and try and make sure that you just have all of those steps sorted so that, again, even if you are at stage 3 where that's the focus that you really need to be, you just make sure that you haven't skipped any of the really core foundational things that I think are really important in stage 1 and stage 2. That's basically what I would recommend. But again, what you might want to do is kind of, again, watch them all, and then focus on sort of stage 3 or something if that's where you feel you're at. And you can obviously watch all of the tutorials, as you want. The thing is with a lot of these, a lot of the content in this course, firstly, there's quite a lot, and a lot of it is sort of real time, right? So the Forest Girl Advanced Technique tutorial is 22 hours long, and I'm assuming that, if you watch that, it's going to be something you do a bit at a time. You maybe sort of fast forward some bits, or you focus on the bits you kind of want. Again, it's totally up to you how you, consume that stuff and get the information from it, however you think it's going to be most valuable. But secondly, a lot of the videos are a little bit like this. When I'm not sort of doing direct demos, it's just kind of me talking. I don't have a camera. It's just sort of me talking over notes like this, and it's a little bit more audio content. I've done it that way because I think you can actually be drawing and doing sketching, and it's just a lot easier for me to organize it that way and sort of be looking at the notes, as opposed to trying to set up a photo studio and do that kind of stuff, right? Which I feel like, again, just sort of takes the focus off the simplicity of what I'm saying. So I'm designing this course so that a lot of the content can be listened to with a few sort of visual notes, but you can actually, be sketching or potentially, like working on some stuff while you're kind of listening to it, right? Because it's almost sort of audio content to a certain degree. Again, it's that way by design, because I want you to be drawing as much as possible, not looking at me and, how I've sort of set up the lighting in my room. So the third scenario would be maybe if you are someone who is, again, approaching professional artist sort of level, or maybe you have done some professional work, you've already sort of studied somewhere, but maybe, again, you're wanting to, again, just learn some of the more advanced techniques I've got, maybe pick up a few little bits of advice, etc. In that case, again, I'm assuming that you're going to be competent enough to make those decisions for you, because you're going to be able to listen to some of that advice, and you've maybe already gone through some of those parts of the journey yourself. And really, it's just up to you what information you can take from this course and sort of use it in your daily practice. But again, it is very possible that you also might not have, your sort of sketchbook game, 100% sorted. You may have sort of lost some of that inspiration for doing sort of daily work and daily sort of personal work. And there's a lot of sort of stuff that I talk about, in sort of stage 1, 2, 3, that really is focused on, again, making sure that you're having that ritual, that you really, make sure your process is super reliable and just sort of simple. And again, in stage 3, I do talk a lot about how to think about and meditate on your style and how to sort of work that out. So there's still maybe some value in stage 1, 2, and 3 sort of content. And, I recommend to everyone that they sort of watch these and just understand the general thesis of what I'm saying. Because a lot of it is just giving you advice that sort of describes when you should worry about stuff. And there are a lot of foundational sort of elements there that I think if you are missing, it's gonna cause you trouble in your professional work as well. So again, if you are sort of an intermediate to advanced artist who's already getting professional work and stuff, and you just want to sort of see, okay, how are you doing those sort of bigger illustrations? Is there maybe one or two sort of techniques that you can really learn from me? You might just want to sort of check out the tutorials and maybe check out the stage 4 and 5 advice that is a little bit more about sort of career and that sort of stuff. So again, totally up to you. That's kind of how I'm sort of viewing it. I'm sort of designing something that is based around sort of talking about how to think about the journey from our sort of beginning to our sort of, developing a high level of mastery. And I've sort of put it here, and it's up to you to sort of guide yourself and think about these things, and watch these videos and think about whether they sort of apply to you. And again, get that sketchbook going, get that ritual going. That's the most important thing. And remember that, again, my basic ethos here is very simple, is that what I want for you is to focus on trying to master your craft, to get really good at it, because I think that has a lot of really positive outcomes, both from your own ability to sort of just create the images you want, but also when you do become a professional artist or you achieve the goals that you have artistically. I think having that kind of real sense of depth of knowledge will serve you really well. It makes life a lot easier, as opposed to spending your time, again, laterally trying to, take on, vastly different tools and techniques, and sort of, again, thinking about the next brush, as opposed to like, maybe we should think about coming up with a more interesting image to create, right? As opposed to looking for a new fancy brush that might sort of help us create more interesting art. Right. Often I think the most valuable things come from you. They come from within you. And this course is really designed to try and bring that out and give you the advice and the tactical stuff to kind of focus on that. So that's basically what the illustration journey is about. The 5 stages: stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Build a ritual, develop a reliable, simple process. Focus on building a machine that will prove to you that you are making reliable, regular progress. And then focus on your style and how you can meditate on creating the images that you want to get your imagination onto the page. And then think about how to take on challenge so that you can still do all that stuff while under pressure, while clients or people you're working with are throwing curveballs at you and saying, do this, do that, change it up, make it blue, make it pink, make it yellow, make the character more vibrant, whatever, right? We want to get to the point where that can happen and we feel totally fine and very comfortable and very happy about that process. Not that there's any sort of fear of drawing, or again, someone asks us to change an image and all of a sudden the world sort of crumbles, right? The goal is, again, mastery and really getting deep with your craft, I think, will help you handle all of those issues. And that's what I want for you, because I think that's when both doing art, at a personal level and also working becomes a lot more fun, and a lot more like we imagined it would be, right, when we were younger and looking at all the awesome stuff our favorite artists created. So that's it. I will see you in the next video, which may be somewhere here in stage 1 to stage 5. If you have any questions, you're not quite sure what sort of stage you're at, hit me up, tell me where you're at. I'd be more than happy to try and give you a little bit of advice, if I can, in the comments below, or send me an email. But either way, we'll see you in the next video.